First and foremost, whatever words I utter, I do so with no intention whatsoever of convincing anyone to see things the way I see them. That's not the point. That's far from the point. I say what I say for the purpose of helping people see themselves with more clarity, at least from a different perspective, because we are one. I'm just a reflection of you, bringing information to you, information which you might or might not resonate with. But of course, that's none of my concern. For me, it's about receiving and releasing, in moderation, of course. However, beyond that, I say what I say to shed light on truth. I'd say that's the main thing. However, I can only show you the door to truth. But you, my friend, must walk through it. That's if you are willing. You must walk through it by your own self. And the truth simply boils down to this. You have infinite options. And by no means am I suggesting that you should go out into the world and mingle with multiple partners. No, no, no. When I say options, I'm referring to options in the context of experience, which is merely an extension of your being. And with that established, let me just say, you may not be perfect. In fact, you will constantly get people who remind you, I meant to say, that you are not perfect. As if they can even comprehend perfection. Because in my opinion, everything is perfect. It's only through limited perception do we perceive things as imperfect, because we don't have the capacity to experience the perfection of things, because we've locked ourselves up in limited perception, which is merely a reflection of the impressions we've had, the conditioning that our mind has undergone. But that's not the point. The point is, you may not be perfect, but make it a point to at least be yourself, perfectly so. That's to say, be perfectly you. Because in all honesty, the word perfect is merely a symbol of a limited concept, or rather, a conception formed by a limited perspective. So, how could such perception possibly perceive perfection, let alone that which is imperfect? And that's much like a mad person exclaiming that the world is a mad place. Surely such evaluation-based judgment wouldn't be rooted in reality, but only a narrative held in relation to it. And such is the folly of man. The folly that's a fundamental cause of imperfection as we've come to know it. And without a doubt, the bane of man. And to those who are not familiar with the term bane, its implication is causality. It signifies the source of one's existing or impending downfall, or misery in general. And so, I must add that, honestly speaking, it's hard for me not to conclude that we assimilate suffering when suffering itself is ultimately a mental phenomenon. Are we perhaps going insane because we are driving ourselves there? I think we ought to take accountability for our experience, because at the end of the day, we are individually experiencing reality, despite what we might believe is happening outside of us. We are fundamentally masters of our fate and captain our souls, or at least we should. We either get involved, or we can watch as the world dictates how we should be, or who we become rather, and ultimately how we come to live. And in so doing, we prone ourselves to exploitation, and therefore we become dependent on people, dependent on circumstances, dependent on government, since people like crying about the government and shifting the blame onto the government as if they are not individuals. I'm just saying. And the most typical example is attachment, becoming dependent on attachment, and finally memory. We become dependent on memory because it feels familiar. It takes away the responsibility of being. And so, what we lack in truth is presence. By way of us identifying with dead times, past times, times that don't exist within the now, within the only real time. I think we should identify with that we refer to as God, because essentially God is the essence of life. But we don't identify with that which we refer to as God, which again is essentially the essence of life. And so the natural question would be, are we not live? And if we are, why is it that we go out of our way to identify with limitation, with mediocrity, with convenience, with conceptions that we formulated for comfort, which bear no roots in reality, mere illusions which stifle our capacity to experience? Why do we do ourselves that bad? It's such a sad reality. Well, at least not for me. And because of this fact, I can attest to the fact that one's quality of experience has nothing to do with one's external reality. Because everything that you experience, reality, will be experienced in the same way that you experience yourself. So if you can just sit and feel good within yourself, then all experiences will feel good. Not good in the usual sense, but good in a creative sense, in a lively sense. Even negative situations, or situations which seem negative from the outside, won't be so to you. Sure, you will have setbacks, but ultimately you will know that they are there to teach you, to grow you, because such is the nature of experience. That's the purpose of experience. That's true experience. But not for the purpose of identifying with it, of clinging to it, like we often do, more especially with painful experiences. It's not about that. That's just you holding yourself back, and you definitely need not do that. There's always a better way, you know. And if you are willing, you don't even have to wait for anybody to tell you what's the better way. You already know, but because you think you know, you block the experience of you getting to know, because the unknowingness which is inherent in experience, in true boundless experience, is how you come to, in a sense, remember yourself, or remember the nature of self. And this is not mental comprehension. This is embodiment. Or in other words, being. Some things you cannot think, but you can just be. You cannot think love. You can just be love. And therefore share love. Share bliss. Share happiness. All these states you cannot think, but your thinking can produce certain states. But there's certain states that you cannot reach by mental faculties, at least not alone. Some things require stillness, silence within. And that silence comes as a byproduct of you not clinging to mental impressions, to conditioning, which is left when mental impressions have been made. You are not your body, you are not your mind. You are using these things to experience. The point is in the experience. And once you come to embody this truth, certain things will come within your experience, things which you cannot really explain. There's certain things till today I have no words for, and I keep finding words for, little by little. But they are wholesome experiences. And so if you can find words for your experience, then you're probably living a limited life, or as limited life, because you are limiting yourself. You've put a cap on the experience of your being through your identification with mind. It's unnecessary. I know it feels familiar, it feels safe, but that safety comes at a cost which you cannot even begin to fathom. I remember I once made this video outlining the importance of observing the child if we are really to witness what being oneself truly looks like. Because the child is not so self-conscious, but we teach the child to be self-conscious. We limit the child. What we know is not life, but we think we know life. And we destroy life in the child, but the child knows life more than you because they don't think life, they are just bundles of life. But you know survival, you know hunger, and so you instill that in the child. That's the seed that you plant. And we wonder why so many of our kind are so limited in who they are and who they can become and what they think of themselves. Because the point is not to think about yourself. The point is to be yourself. Be yourself. Let your soul guide you, baby. I don't know where that came from, but I just couldn't help myself. And that's the point. Just be what the moment requires you to be. One last thing. The other day, I had a very interesting conversation with someone who asked me a question, which, in my opinion, was somewhat of a challenge. I can only guess that he was testing me. And I'm not just assuming this. It's in the words that he used. He was like, who are you? Since you hold a whole book about finding yourself. Just imagine. And when I thought about it, I realized that I don't really have to think about it. Because for me, at least, the question of who is irrelevant. For me, it's about what I am. Because that's the thing which I identify with. And what am I? I am life. I am alive. And so the who is relative, I guess you could say. I can be whatever the moment requires me to be. At least I've come to realize. And for a while I thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't comprehend what was going on. But the moment the acknowledgement came within my experience of this beautiful gift, I began making the most out of it. And I've come to see that life is quite flexible because I am. And so the question of who is unanswerable. It bears no real response because people change constantly. They change according to the times. But what doesn't change is the fundamental being, the fundamental nature of their being, I meant to say. The fundamental beingness behind the who. The who is merely a mask. But most people come to identify with this who, and we've coined the who personality. I think I've overshared at this point. Looking at the time, I really must cut this short. But I trust that you've gained some perspective. I trust that this will help you experience yourself more. That's if you are willing. That's if you are open to the experience of your being without any judgment. And with that being said, do subscribe to the channel so that it can reach a wider audience. But beyond that, love and much light. Until next time, cheers.